All right, good afternoon, everyone. 52 minutes after 12. Wave meteorologist Brian Good with you guys with a special updated look there at Storm Talk slash actually Snow Talk kind of mixed into this as well. A lot to cover just in the next 36 hours, and then I'll get to some of the longer term setup as well as I try to do anyway on each blog post. I'm Wave meteorologist Brian Good. Welcome aboard. This will be a bit of an abbreviated version today just because of timing. We've got a lot of breaking news that's happening today, too. So we're having to all kind of share the space here a little bit. So I'll get you updated on where we stand now, and obviously through our afternoon, evening newscast, we'll guide you through this event hour by hour. All right, nothing major coming our way. It's just very much a spiked setup of different elements that spike continuously for several hours. That's what's likely making this one stand out a little more than some of our other systems certainly can do. So it's not a 1-2 punch kind of deal. What's in here, it's in and it's out, and we can relax. This one's going to be a prolonged event, and it'll be evolving storylines too as it sticks around town all the way through tomorrow night. Long way to go. All right. So I know you're going to have questions. I know the first question you're going to ask someone is there going to be a tornado? Next will be, what about my street? Hey, we'll get to all those questions, and hopefully when I explain all this, I will put your mind at ease on how some of this is starting to look. Okay, let's start off with first off, a view outside. This is our lovely flag that we use a lot for wind. As I always say, if it's facing to the right, it's a good warming wind. Otherwise, it's also indicating the speed at times really fluctuating. That the American flag is hanging on tight there behind the blue flag there. I think it's a state flag. I see the state flag in the distance, so I'm not sure. I think it's the city of New Albany flag that's in front, the big blue one, and then the state flag and the American flag is in between them, but it's the one that's actually got a little more wind damage to it than the others. Anyway, you can see some of the what we call these gravity waves at times have been flying on by in the distance, indicating a very turbulent setup outside. Current wind advisory was scheduled to start at 3. They've moved it up to now just because some of the gusts were already climbing. I know we don't have all this filled in yet for Indiana and to Carroll County, as always the case. You guys are used to this, different criteria for your offices, but I got a feeling that based on how these wind fields are, they may at least include you all in a wind advisory with the afternoon update. We'll see. Not our call, but I'm sure they're looking at it. 35, the current gust in Louisville, 32 at Fort Knox. Been at that level several times already, nearing 30 miles per hour in several spots, whether it's Kentucky or Indiana. It's at least been able to warm us up, as we've mentioned, nice and mild outside. Temperatures in the 60s at the moment. We did reach 68 briefly. We have a chance that we could get into the upper 60s as far as like 69 to 70. That's certainly reachable in today's setup. All right, it's going to stay quiet as far as avoiding any rain for this afternoon. If you're worried about that disrupting your plans, anything you're trying to do around town. Now, the downside to that is that the air is so dry and it is so windy, as we do have a bit more of an elevated fire risk today. So mainly for anything that's been left outside from perhaps the flooding that we had or the severe winter weather, and it's been left outside to where the wind has been able to hit that particular piece of wood, wherever the case may be, and leaves and dry them out rapidly in this scenario, so they become a fuel. So it's mainly anything sitting on top of the ground becomes a little more of a risk of catching on fire. So that's only going to be the case until we get the humidity to climb and we add moisture in general when it comes to rain, which both are going to be happening as we head into this evening. It's just the next 2 to 3 hours, a little bit touch and go there. Usually we run into some grass fires on the medians on the interstates in this scenario, so just be extra aware. All right, here's the main storm back to the west, already doing what we call a negative tilt. Here's the center of the low. Look at that jet, the amount of air, just absolutely, the divergence loft is amazing with this system, allowing for just a very strong push, almost like a bow and arrow, aiming right toward Memphis for some of the strongest of the wind gusts. And really, once you get north of that, you start to cut off a bit more on the severe side. Notice all this heavier rain in areas of Arkansas into Missouri. We'll come back to that, but that really will be a big part of our saving grace for later on tonight. To get you down to the deep south, get rid of the clouds, and you can see how the warnings extend. Look at this nasty line of storms all the way down into Louisiana. We've had a few tornado warnings. Actually got one there now over Alexandria into Louisiana, and then even down to the Gulf itself. Severe weather will be a risk. Here is New Orleans. Today is Mardi Gras. And, well, this is a live look. They are battling the wind at the moment. They have been ordered to shut down all the parades and festivities here very soon and get everyone to a sign of some safety there, because the gradient wind, even outside of thunderstorms, it can easily get to 60 to 80 miles per hour at times today. But you add in the tornado threat, as you saw there into Missouri, that's not good either. That could also become an issue for at least part of the metro in the next 2 to 3 hours. I know at the moment that's probably the last thing they're worried about, but that's why we're here, to do the worrying for them. And if you have any friends or family there, just make sure they're aware that you may want to get to a safe spot before everyone else finds out where that is and it gets overly crowded. But what a mess. Bad timing for them down there for sure. The system itself has got so many different storylines to it, but the wind by far is the biggest because of its expansive amount of alerts it has with it, from the Appalachian Mountains all the way to the Rocky Mountains. We have wind alerts. When you get into that brown shade, it's more of a wind advisory. You get into that tan yellowish look there, mustard color, the man with the yellow hat color. You get into high wind warning status. Now that is limited to right there south of the squall line for Louisiana. Also where the wind goes up the Appalachians, high wind warning criteria there. And then on the colder side, very dry, cold dry are just slamming into the plains, leading to very strong winds that are easily exceeding hurricane force in this area of the country. We are not as strong. We don't have widespread high wind warnings in our sector and down into the Mississippi area. And that's because we have more clouds and we have more moisture involved in the air. So it's a little more of a challenge to get widespread high wind scenarios, but you can get it in localized fashions. Now, typically when that happens, we get lightning and thunder, and we have those covered with severe thunderstorm warnings. But in tonight's case, when we have that potential, we likely will not have any lightning and thunder, just a heavier band of showers. And that becomes a challenge we've run into often when it comes to tracking how to alert you all of those higher winds. Do we, as a discussion as weather service offices in the media, do we go with a high wind warning, and therefore you know that potential is there to get to 60 miles per hour if these rain showers move in, or limited to just a severe thunderstorm warning? That way you know when, just as that moment is about to happen, and you can take shelter. There's always mixed opinions on that. I personally think if it's a general wind that's going to fall roughly below 50 throughout much of the day, below damaging levels, then you have a chance to surge to damaging levels or exceed 60. I think the warning works better, especially in the middle of the night. It gets you to where you're waking up, you're aware of it. But I also understand a high wind warning well in advance. Allows you to prepare before you go to bed so that you don't have to worry about it, but you may not catch that moment as suddenly as you would have without a warning. Let me know your thoughts on it. It always is a tough one for the Weather Service. They always have this discussion all the time when we get in these cold season severe weather setups. That's usually a factor. You get these high winds that can be embedded into heavier rain bands without lightning and thunder. As far as the severe side on thunder, overall it's enhanced risk. It's going to be right across the south portion of that line heading into the Dixie states, and then the Tennessee Valley. We'll see some of that action. But once you really get into Kentucky, it does indeed drop off. It's just one of those setups again. Do we have warnings to come out for that heavy rain shower with strong damaging winds? That's going to make this map look a little wonky and weird later, but don't worry about the finer points of the maps right now. Just know the setup. That's important. All right. So as I mentioned, we're going to stay dry for much of the daylight hours today. I think it'll slowly evolve into a band of rain and some thunder initially that moves in from our western counties. Before we get to sunset, you should see the skies darken in the distance looking to the west. This is not going to be a severe band here, but this does have the potential to have some lightning with it and heavy rain. But then we get later into the night, after hours of the rain. Yes, that cuts down the fuel. You're right, which is why we're not talking about a lot of lightning later tonight. But these bands will become a little more on the orange, if not yellow side, even red on the radar. You'll see them definitively connecting to the thunderstorms that go all the way down to the Gulf states. You'll be able to connect this line once it gets established. It's already trying to get established into areas of Louisiana right now. This is the line, and it's only going to last from 30 minutes, if that, in any one location. But as this passes by, this is where that wind surge could get up to damaging wind level. Now, what's always a challenge is that we're at night. We've had some rain for a while, especially in advance of it. So sometimes the data shows these strong winds above the tree line, but it doesn't always mean they're going to make it below the tree line to the ground level and indeed cause damage. It's various. A lot gets more complex than that. And we call this a stable layer that can form where the instability, if there's any at all, becomes much more elevated. But I tell you what, if you can have a heavy enough shower, we've seen this happen where you get the momentum to be able to get transferred straight below that tree line, and boom, there you go. You got wind damage that can take place. But because we are cutting out a lot of the severe thunderstorm parameters out of this system, we don't have as much of a worry on a tornado outbreak coming our way tonight or anything like that. This is more about the idea of heavy showers that could contain some strong winds just because of the energy the system has alone, not so much because of severe thunderstorm dynamics. So it's a kind of a hybrid setup of the two ideas, but it's going to be one that before you go to bed tonight, make sure to tune in tonight, 11 o'clock, watch Kevin, see where we stand on this. And as always the case, charge up those devices in case the power were to flicker, or if we get 60-mile-per-hour winds, we're going to have power outages. That always happens at that level, so let's hope it's not you. It moves on by. Again, doesn't last very long. Once we get to 2 or 3 in the morning, most of that should be east of our area. We don't get cold behind this. We just quiet down, could even go dry for a few hours. Then we got to deal with the curl of the low pressure itself back into Illinois. Now, this was a concern that we've talked about several times, whether or not this could fire up some thunderstorms as it curls back around. For the moment, I'm not seeing that being a huge threat. I think this will have much more of a colder component to it than warm air. Therefore, that will limit it, but it could have some hail with it, or grappa, we call that, soft hail. But pea-sized hail certainly could develop in this pocket that will aim almost due north toward Indianapolis once it pops. So be aware of that for tomorrow morning and midday. Some downpours with hail, maybe a little bit of lightning possible with this little curl that comes into play. But that is it on warmer weather, which is not overly warm, 40s and 50s, but it is the wall that stands between us and the cold air behind it, because once that passes by, the cold air just rushes in the area. Temperatures will fall steadily for the rest of the afternoon, and then any moisture that's still around will then mix with and change over to snow. And this has got a nice little kick to it where you can get some decent snow showers, and it will be the darkness of night that they're moving in. Those are always pluses for March snows in general to be able to stick, especially on grassy areas, cars, rooftops, even with the warm ground. As long as the rate is up, you can accumulate, especially on grassy areas. And where that zone is still being worked out. But I think that potential is absolutely fair. They can happen. Main roads do well in this scenario, but your side roads or a bridge and overpass can briefly get some slush on it. But here's the thing. Once that rate decreases and ends, which it will do by sunrise Thursday, even though we're at freezing in some spots, the amount of impacts will be very minimal. And much of the snow that fell overnight will be gone. It'll begin to melt almost instantly. So we'll go with under an inch, but could there be a few spots that could get like a 1.2 or 1.3? Yep, that is possible. Seen it happen before already this year. So it can happen in those heavier pockets. It's just really hard to pinpoint this far in advance. All right. Let me take a breather here. Any questions? I can try to right out of the gate, Kimberly. How much snow? It's going to be light amounts, just grassy. Very typical wet snow. But if it's lining up just right, it will be one of those pretty ones. By Thursday morning when you wake up, you may see it all stick to the trees, even if it is just a light coating. It could be really pretty. So make sure to check it out. All right. I think everyone's okay. You're all really quiet today, which makes me a little nervous at the same time. What's next? Well, we have that split system for the weekend. It still looks split. The only concern I got here with the one piece on Friday, almost like that clipper we had this past weekend where we had that snow in the Great Lakes and we had a lot of wind on the southern side, but it was dry. This one's trying to do the same thing on Friday. Another round of wind, perhaps a surge of warmth, with anything precipitation-wise missing us. Not all the models agree on that. Some try to dig a little more to the south before it makes that turn. But I like the northern idea right now. I think that makes sense. But at the very least, we may be featuring another windy setup on Friday. Part number 2 then arrives, and that looks like it's going to dive way to the south. After that fades away off the map, the big story, as we've been tracking for the second week of March, is warmth. A good sign to get into the mid to upper 70s for next week. But the euro, we'll see what it does when it's new run, but it wants to put a damper on that with another push of cold air from the north that could provide for more thunderstorms, more wind, and a drop in temps. That would be probably the end of next week. That's pretty far out in timing. So we got a long way to go here on this up and down pattern. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of trends. And don't forget, good point, Todd. Make sure to move the clock ahead 1 hour Saturday night before you go to bed. Todd, is this warmer temps a sign of the last of the snow? Well, eventually, yes. We're going to see fewer cold attacks like this, but the cold air available to the north of us, it's still there, still available. It's just a matter of the jet stream allowing it to be taken advantage of. And we're seeing it, at least in the next two cases, that indeed is what happens. But you're noticing these snow impacts are not as big of an ordeal as they were, obviously, earlier in the season, which is not too shocking. All right, I got to run. As always, appreciate you all. Sorry, it's a brief one, but I'll be back on actually with another update coming up at about 1:50 on the TV side. And then I'll be back with another update, of course, on Wave News at 3. And at that point, we should be having some of our stronger wind gusts come into play. I'll leave you with that look there, the 10-day, which we're working on now. You see those mid-70s that are showing up as we head into next week especially. So the ups and downs, welcome to March, guys. This is the way it's going to roll here for a while. You all take care. I'll see you all coming up on the flip side.